I, 28F, stood in my wedding dress, a cloud of white tulle and lace. My new husband, Mark, 30M, was by my side. His mother, Eleanor, came toward us. She had a smile on her face that never quite reached her eyes. She pulled me into a hug, her perfume sharp and overwhelming. She squeezed my arms a little too tightly. Then she whispered in my ear, a secret just for me. "He is so lucky to have you," she said. "You are so easy to manipulate." Her words were a cold shock. I pulled back, looking for a sign that she was joking. There was none. Her smile was fixed, a perfect mask of maternal warmth. I turned to look at my husband. I needed to see his confusion, his anger on my behalf. I needed him to defend me. But Mark's face was still. He did not look angry. He did not look confused. He looked blank for a moment. Then I saw it. A tiny, almost invisible flicker of a smile at the corner of his mouth. It was there for less than a second. But I saw it. And in that moment, I froze. My heart felt like it had stopped beating. The music, the laughter, the clinking glasses of our guests all faded into a dull roar. The only thing I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears. He knew. He had heard what she said, and he agreed. The smile was his confirmation. I felt a wave of nausea. I had just married a man who saw me as a puppet. And his mother was the one holding the strings. I had to get through the rest of this day. I had to smile and dance and cut the cake. I could not let them see that they had broken me just an hour into my marriage. So I smiled back at Eleanor. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. "Thank you," I said, my voice sounding strange and far away. "I am so happy to be part of the family." She patted my cheek, her eyes glittering. "We are happy to have you," she said. I knew then that my marriage was not a partnership. It was a trap, and I had just willingly walked into it. I had to find a way out. But first, I had to survive my own wedding reception. I turned to Mark, my smile feeling like a crack in my face. He smiled back, a full, happy smile this time. It looked completely genuine. If I had not seen that tiny flicker before, I would have believed it. I would have believed everything. The rest of the night passed in a blur. People congratulated us. We danced our first dance. I felt Mark's hands on my waist and tried not to flinch. Every touch felt like a lie. Every smile he gave me felt like a performance. I was an actress in a play I did not know I was cast in. My best friend Sarah came up to me while Mark was getting drinks. "You look a little pale," she said. "Are you okay?" I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to break down and cry and let her fix it. But I could not. Not here. Not now. "Just overwhelmed," I said. "It is a lot to take in." Sarah squeezed my hand. "Just breathe," she said. "It is a beautiful wedding. He really loves you." I looked over at Mark, laughing with his friends at the bar. He looked like the perfect, loving husband. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe I had misunderstood. But deep down, I knew I had not. I knew what I saw. I knew what I heard. The truth was cold and hard in my gut. The next morning, we left for our honeymoon. We were going to a beautiful resort by the ocean. It was supposed to be the most romantic week of my life. Instead, it felt like a prison sentence. Every time Mark touched me, I had to fight the urge to pull away. Every time he said, "I love you," the words echoed with his mother's whisper. "You're so easy to manipulate." On our third day there, I decided to test the waters. I needed to know how deep this went. We were sitting by the pool. I put my book down and looked at him. "Mark," I said, "your mother said something strange to me at the wedding." He looked up from his phone, his sunglasses hiding his eyes. "Oh?" he asked. "What did she say?" "She said I was easy to manipulate," I said, watching his face carefully. He laughed. It was a relaxed, easy sound. "My mom has a weird sense of humor," he said. "She probably meant you were easygoing. Do not take it personally. It did not sound like a joke, I said. He took off his sunglasses and looked at me. His eyes were full of concern. It was a perfect performance. Honey, you are overthinking this, he said. You know how she is. She says odd things sometimes. She loves you. She was just welcoming you to the family in her own way. I am overthinking this. He was already using the words. He was trying to make me doubt myself. It was working. A small part of me wanted so badly to believe him. It would be so much easier to believe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe you are right, I said, letting him think he had won. He smiled and put his sunglasses back on. I know I am, he said. Now, let's not talk about my mother on our honeymoon. Let's just relax. He had shut down the conversation completely. He had dismissed my feelings and made me feel like I was the one with the problem. I felt a chill run down my spine despite the hot sun. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a strategy, and he was very good at it. For the rest of the honeymoon, I played the part of the happy bride. I laughed at his jokes. I held his hand. I let him believe that I had forgotten all about it. But I had not forgotten. I was watching. I was listening. I was learning. I needed to understand the game before I could figure out how to win it. When we got back home, reality set in. We moved into the house we had bought together. It was supposed to be our home, our sanctuary, but it felt like Eleanor's territory. She had a key. She would let herself in whenever she wanted, rearranging our furniture, stocking our fridge with food we did not like, leaving little notes about how to properly clean the countertops. I tried to talk to Mark about it. I am not comfortable with your mom coming over unannounced, I said one evening. He was on the couch watching TV. He did not even look at me. She is just trying to help, he said. She is excited for us. Why does that bother you? It is our home, Mark, I said. I would like some privacy. I would like us to be able to build our own life here. He finally looked at me, his expression annoyed. You are being ungrateful, he said. My mother spent a fortune helping us with the down payment for this house. The least you can do is let her visit her son. He had twisted it again. Now I was ungrateful. I was the one keeping him from his mother. I felt my anger rise, but I pushed it down. Getting angry would not help. They wanted me to be emotional. They wanted me to be hysterical. That would make it easier to dismiss me. Can you at least ask her to call first? I asked, my voice calm and even. He sighed dramatically. Fine, he said. I will talk to her. Are you happy now? He did not talk to her. The next day, I came home from work to find Eleanor in my kitchen, reorganizing my spice rack. Hello, dear, she said, not looking up. I noticed you had your paprika next to the cinnamon. That just will not do. I am putting everything in alphabetical order. It is much more efficient. I took a deep breath. Eleanor, I said, we need to talk about this. She finally looked at me, her eyebrows raised. Talk about what? She asked. My kitchen, I said. Our house. I need you to call before you come over. She put a jar of basil down and crossed her arms. I was just trying to help, she said, her voice dripping with fake hurt. I did not realize my help was not wanted. I did not realize you were so territorial. It is not about being territorial, I said. It is about respect and boundaries. Boundaries, she scoffed. We are family. We do not need boundaries. She looked past me toward the living room. Is Mark home yet? I brought that lasagna he loves. She had completely steamrolled me. She had dismissed my feelings, insulted me, and then changed the subject to Mark. She was showing me that my opinion did not matter. Only Mark's mattered, and she knew exactly how to please him. I felt helpless. I felt small. This was my home, but it did not feel like it. I felt like a guest who was overstaying her welcome. That night, I told Mark what happened. I told him his mother had ignored my request. I told him she had insulted me. "You are being too sensitive," he said, not looking away from the game on his phone. "She is from a different generation. That is just how she shows love. You need to stop taking everything as a personal attack." I looked at him. Really looked at him. He was not my partner. He was her son. And I was just the outsider who was causing problems. The line had been drawn. It was me against them, and I was completely outnumbered. I decided to call Sarah. I needed to talk to someone who was on my side. I told her everything. The whisper at the wedding, the honeymoon, the key, the spice rack. "Oh, honey," she said. "This is bad. This is really bad." "I know," I said, my voice cracking. "What do I do? I feel like I am going crazy." "You are not crazy," she said firmly. "They are gaslighting you. This is classic narcissistic behavior. You need to be careful." "How do I fight back?" I asked. "You do not fight back," she said. "Not yet. You gather information. You watch them. You learn their playbook. Right now, you are weak because you are emotional. You need to become strong. You need to become strategic." Her words were like a splash of cold water. She was right. I had been letting my emotions control me. I had been reacting to their provocations. I needed to stop reacting and start planning. "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath. "Okay, I can do that. Where do I start?" "Start with the money," she said. "Control the money and you control the situation. Do you have a joint bank account?" "Yes," I said. "Get your paycheck deposited into a separate account immediately," she said. "An account that only you have access to. Do it tomorrow." "He will notice," I said. "Let him," she said. "When he asks, just tell him you are trying to be more organized with your personal finances. Make it sound boring and practical. Do not make it a fight." The next day, I did exactly that. I went to a different bank and opened a new checking account. I filled out the forms to have my salary deposited there. It felt like a small act of rebellion, but it was a start. I was taking back a piece of my independence. A few weeks later, Mark brought it up. We were paying bills. "Hey," he said, looking at the computer screen. "Your paycheck did not get deposited into the joint account this month." I kept my face neutral. "Oh, right," I said. "I opened a new account just for my salary. It helps me keep track of my personal spending for my budget." He frowned. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "We are married. We should be sharing everything." "We are sharing," I said calmly. "I will transfer my half of the bills into the joint account every month. This just makes it easier for me to manage my own money." He did not look happy. "It feels weird," he said. "It feels like you do not trust me." There it was. He was turning it around, making it about my trust in him, not about my need for financial autonomy. It was a classic manipulation tactic. "It is not about trust, Mark," I said, using the same calm voice. "It is about budgeting. I read an article that said it is a good way for couples to manage their finances. It prevents arguments about spending." He was quiet for a moment. He was probably trying to figure out a way to argue against that logic. "Fine," he said finally. "Whatever, as long as you pay your half of the bills." I had won. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. I had set a boundary, and I had defended it without getting emotional. I felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could learn to play their game better than they did. The next front was the house. Eleanor continued to treat it like her own. One day, I came home and the hideous floral curtains from her own living room were hanging in ours. The simple, clean white ones I had picked out were gone. I found them in a trash bag in the garage. She had thrown them away. I saw red. I wanted to scream. I wanted to take her new curtains and rip them to shreds. But I remembered what Sarah had said. "Do not get emotional. Be strategic. I took the curtains out of the bag. I folded them neatly. I put them in my car. Then I went inside and started making dinner, pretending I had not noticed a thing. Mark came home an hour later. "Wow," he said, looking at the curtains. "Mom put up the new curtains. They look great." "She did," I said, my voice light and airy. It was so thoughtful of her. He looked at me, surprised. I think he was expecting a fight. "You like them?" he asked. "They are not what I would have chosen," I said honestly. "But it is sweet that she wants to make the house feel like home." He relaxed. He thought he had dodged a bullet. He thought I had finally given in. He was wrong. The next day, I took my old curtains to a consignment shop. They were good quality, and the shop owner was happy to take them. I used the money I made to buy a new, high-quality deadbolt for our front door. That evening, I waited until Mark was in the shower. I installed the new deadbolt myself. It was not hard. I watched a video online. When I was done, I had 2 keys. One for me and one for Mark. Eleanor's key no longer worked. I waited. I knew it would not take long. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Eleanor. "Clara," she said, her voice tight with anger. "I cannot get into the house. Did you change the locks?" "We did not change the locks," I said, which was technically true. "We added a deadbolt for extra security." "Why would you do that?" she demanded. "And why was I not given a key?" "It is our house, Eleanor," I said, my voice still calm. Mark and I decided we needed more security. We only got 2 keys, one for me and one for him. "This is ridiculous," she sputtered. "I am his mother. I need to be able to get in. What if there is an emergency?" "If there is an emergency, you can call us," I said, like anyone else would. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, sharp and angry. "I will be speaking to Mark about this," she said. And then she hung up. I knew the storm was coming. Sure enough, when Mark got home that night, he was furious. "What did you do?" he yelled, throwing his keys on the counter. "My mother is hysterical. She said you locked her out of her own son's house." "I did not lock her out," I said, standing my ground. "I secured our home. Our home, Mark, not hers." "You did it behind my back," he accused. "We discussed this," I reminded him. "I told you I was not comfortable with her coming in whenever she wanted. You said you would talk to her, and you did not. So I solved the problem. By disrespecting my mother," he shot back. "By respecting our marriage," I corrected him. "This is our space. We are the ones who get to decide who comes in and out. Not her." He stared at me, his jaw tight. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He was angry at me, but he knew I was right. He knew he had failed to set a boundary with his mother, and I had been forced to do it for him. "This is not over," he said, his voice low. "No," I said. "It is not." That night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed. There was a cold distance between us that had never been there before. I knew I was risking my marriage. But what kind of marriage was it, really? A marriage where I had no voice, no say, no respect? I would rather be alone than be a puppet in their show. The next few weeks were tense. Eleanor gave me the silent treatment. Mark was sullen and distant. They were trying to punish me, to make me feel isolated and guilty. They were waiting for me to apologize, to give in, to beg for their forgiveness. I did not. I focused on my work. I spent time with Sarah. I started going to the gym. I was building a life for myself outside of my marriage. I was becoming my own person again, not just Mark's wife or Eleanor's daughter-in-law. And I kept watching. I kept listening. I started to notice things I had been blind to before. I noticed how every major decision we made, from the car we bought to the vacation we planned, was influenced by Eleanor. Mark would present her opinions as his own. "I was thinking we should go to the mountains this year," he would say. And a week later, I would hear Eleanor talking about how she had told him the beach was too crowded. I also started paying more attention to our finances. Now that I had my own account, I could see the flow of money more clearly. I noticed that every month, a few $100s would be transferred from our joint account to an account I did not recognize. It was not a bill payment. It was just a simple transfer. I asked Mark about it. "What is this transfer for?" I asked, pointing to the line on the bank statement. He glanced at it. "Oh, that is for my mom," he said casually. "I help her out with some of her expenses." "You are giving your mother money from our joint account?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Without discussing it with me?" "It is not a big deal," he said, getting defensive. "It is my money. I can do what I want with it." "It is our money, Mark," I said. "It is a joint account. Half of that is mine. And you are giving it to the woman who has been systematically trying to undermine our marriage." "You are being dramatic," he said, rolling his eyes. "She is my mother. I am supposed to take care of her." "We are supposed to take care of each other," I said. "That is what marriage is. You are supposed to be on my team. But you are not. You are on hers." He did not have an answer for that. He just shook his head and walked away, ending the conversation like he always did. I knew I needed more information. I needed proof. Sarah had a friend who was a private investigator. I hesitated for a week, but after another fight with Mark about his mother, I made the call. It felt extreme, but I was desperate. I felt like I was drowning and I needed a lifeline. The investigator's name was David. He was a quiet, professional man. I told him everything. He listened patiently, taking notes. "It sounds like a classic case of financial abuse on top of the emotional manipulation," he said when I was done. "We can definitely look into that transfer. Do you have the account number?" I did. I had written it down. I gave it to him. "Let me see what I can find," he said. "I will be in touch." A week later, David called me. "I have some information for you," he said. "The account you gave me is a joint savings account. It is in 2 names. My heart pounded in my chest. "What are the names?" I asked. "Eleanor Peterson," he said, "and Mark Peterson." The breath left my body in a rush. It was not just that he was giving her money. They had a secret account together, an account that predated our marriage. He had been lying to me for years. Our entire relationship was built on a foundation of deceit. "There is more," David said. "I looked into the activity on the account. There are regular monthly deposits from your husband, as you suspected. But there are also some very large, unusual deposits." "What kind of deposits?" I asked. 2 years ago, there was a deposit of $50,000, he said. "It came from an investment account that was in your name before you were married." I felt my blood run cold. $50,000. It was a premarital investment my grandparents had set up for me. I had told Mark about it when we were engaged. He had encouraged me to cash it out and put it into a high-yield savings account he had found. He said it would be safer. That account was their secret account. He had not just been giving his mother our money. He had stolen my inheritance. "Clara?" David's voice came through the phone, sounding distant. "Are you there?" "I am here," I whispered. "He stole from me." "It looks that way," David said gently. "But the good news is we have the proof. We have the bank records showing the transfer from your investment account to theirs. This is a very strong case." I felt a surge of rage so powerful it almost knocked me over. It was a pure, clean anger that burned away all the confusion and self-doubt. I was not crazy. I was not sensitive. I was a victim of a long, calculated con, and I was done being a victim. "What else did you find?" I asked, my voice hard as steel. "I looked into Eleanor's finances as you requested," he said. "She presents herself as a wealthy widow, but she is not. Her late husband left her with a mountain of debt. She has been living off the money Mark gives her. And she has some other sources of income that are questionable." "Tell me," I said. She is on the board of a local children's charity, he said. A very prestigious one. It seems that over the past few years, some of the charity's funds have been mismanaged. There are records of payments for services that were never rendered, to companies that do not seem to exist. And the money? I asked. It is difficult to trace completely, he said. But some of it appears to have ended up in that same secret savings account she shares with your husband. I closed my eyes. It was worse than I could have imagined. They were not just manipulating me. They were criminals. They were stealing from a children's charity. Eleanor's entire public image, her reputation as a pillar of the community, was a lie. David, I said, I need you to get me every piece of evidence you can find. Bank statements, invoices, anything that proves what they have been doing. I do not care what it costs. I am already on it, he said. I hung up the phone. I felt strangely calm. The shock had passed, and now there was only clarity. I knew what I had to do. I was not just going to leave him. I was going to expose them. I was going to take back everything they had stolen from me, and I was going to destroy the life they had built on lies. My plan started to form. It was bold, and it was risky. But I had the truth on my side. And I had something they had underestimated all along: my intelligence. They thought I was easy to manipulate. They were about to find out how wrong they were. First, I needed to play the part. I had to go back to being the dutiful, slightly clueless wife. I had to make them feel safe. I had to lull them into a false sense of security. That night, I apologized to Mark. I am sorry, I said, catching him as he came out of the shower. I have been so difficult lately. You were right. I have been too sensitive about your mom. He looked at me with suspicion. What brought this on? He asked. I have just been thinking, I said, forcing tears into my eyes. I love you, and she is your mother. I want us to be a family. I was wrong to try and push her away. I am willing to try again if you are. He was still wary, but I could see him starting to soften. He wanted to believe me. It made his life easier if I was compliant. Okay, he said slowly. Okay, Clara. I appreciate that. I went to him and hugged him. It felt like hugging a stranger, a monster. But I held on, burying my face in his chest so he could not see the look in my eyes. I will call her tomorrow and apologize, I whispered. The next day, I called Eleanor. I gave her the performance of a lifetime. I cried. I told her I had been stressed and had taken it out on her. I told her I respected her and wanted to learn from her. She lapped it up. Her voice, which had been so cold, became warm and magnanimous. Of course, dear, she said. I understand. It takes time to adjust to being part of a new family. I forgive you. She even offered to come over and help me fix the living room, which I knew meant putting her own stamp on it. I agreed enthusiastically. The trap was set. They both believed I had crawled back, defeated. They thought they had won. For the next 2 weeks, I was the perfect daughter-in-law. I listened to Eleanor's endless advice. I praised her taste. I let her rearrange my house. I let Mark think he was in control. Meanwhile, David was sending me documents. Encrypted files full of bank records, fake invoices, and correspondence between Eleanor and her shell companies. Mark, who was an accountant, had helped her set it all up. His fingerprints were all over it. He was not just complicit. He was an active partner in her crimes. The charity's annual fundraising gala was in 3 weeks. It was the biggest social event of the year in our town. Eleanor was the chair of the event committee. She would be on stage giving a speech about the importance of generosity and community. It was the perfect stage for my final act. I started laying the groundwork. I reached out to Mark's uncle, David. Not the investigator, but a respected family member. Uncle David was Mark's father's brother. He was a kind, decent man who had always been nice to me. He was also on the board of directors for the charity. He was the one person in the family I thought might actually have a conscience. I invited him and his wife for dinner. Mark was thrilled. He thought I was making an effort to get closer to his family. During dinner, I carefully steered the conversation toward the charity. Eleanor is doing such an amazing job with the gala, I said. She works so hard for that organization. Uncle David smiled. She certainly does, he said. She is very dedicated. The charity is lucky to have her. I have been thinking about getting more involved myself, I said. I was looking at the charity's public financial reports. It is also interesting. I saw a flicker of something in Mark's eyes. Unease. Clara, do not bore David with accounting details, he said with a nervous laugh. Oh, it is no bother, Uncle David said. I am glad you're taking an interest. It is important for donors to know where their money is going. That is what I think too, I said, looking directly at Mark. Transparency is so important, is it not? I had planted the seed. I had let them both know that I was looking at the finances. Mark would see it as a sign of my new supportive attitude. Uncle David would remember it later when the truth came out. The week before the gala, I made my next move. I called a board meeting. Well, not me. I used an anonymous email address and a voice-disguising app to send a tip to the charity's board of directors, including Uncle David. The tip was vague. It just said that there were financial irregularities that needed to be investigated and that proof would be provided at the gala. It caused a stir. Uncle David called Mark, concerned. I listened to Mark's side of the conversation. No, of course not, Mark said, his voice tight. It is just some disgruntled volunteer, I am sure. My mother's bookkeeping is impeccable. Yes, I have helped her with it myself. Do not worry, David. It is all under control. He hung up the phone, his face pale. He looked at me. Some crazy person is spreading rumors about my mother, he said. Oh no, I said, my face a mask of concern. That is terrible. Who would do such a thing? I do not know, he said, running a hand through his hair. But it is going to ruin the gala if we are not careful. He was scared. I could see it. He knew the rumors were true. And he was starting to suspect who might be behind them. But he could not accuse me. I had been the perfect compliant wife. It did not make sense. His confusion was my greatest weapon. The night of the gala arrived. I wore a red dress. A dress that said I was not afraid. A dress that said I was not going to be invisible. Mark was a nervous wreck. He kept checking his phone, looking over his shoulder. Eleanor, on the other hand, was in her element. She moved through the crowd like a queen, accepting compliments, her smile never faltering. She had no idea what was coming. She believed she was untouchable. I found Uncle David by the silent auction tables. David, I said, I am so glad I found you. I am worried about that anonymous tip. Do you think it is serious? He looked at me, his eyes troubled. I do not know what to think, Clara, he said. Eleanor and Mark swear it is nonsense, but it is worrying. I have something you need to see, I said, keeping my voice low. But not here. Can we step outside for a moment? He hesitated, then nodded. We walked out onto a small terrace overlooking the gardens. I handed him a manila envelope. What is this? He asked. It is the proof, I said. It is bank statements, copies of checks made out to fake companies, and a sworn affidavit from a private investigator. It shows that Eleanor, with Mark's help, has embezzled over $200,000 from this charity over the last 3 years. He opened the envelope, his hands shaking slightly. He pulled out the first few pages. I watched his face as he read. I saw shock, then disbelief, then a dawning, horrified understanding. I cannot believe this, he whispered. My own family. They stole my inheritance too, I said quietly. $50,000 that my grandparents left me. They tricked me into putting it into a secret account they controlled. That is in there too. He looked up at me, his face pale. Clara, I am so sorry. Do not be sorry, I said. Be angry and do the right thing. He nodded, his jaw set. I will, he said. I have to. I will take this to the rest of the board immediately. We need to act before she goes on that stage. No, I said. Let her go on stage. Let everyone see her for who she is. The pillar of the community. The generous philanthropist. Let her give her speech. And when she is done, that is when you act. He looked at me, a new understanding in his eyes. He saw my strength. He saw my resolve. He nodded again. Okay, Clara, he said. We will do it your way. We went back inside. I found Mark. He was looking for me, his face a mask of anxiety. Where were you? He asked. I was just getting some fresh air, I said, smiling at him. It is a little stuffy in here. His eyes narrowed. He was looking at me, really looking at me for the first time in weeks. He saw the red dress. He saw the confidence in my posture. He saw the look in my eyes. And I think, in that moment, he knew. He knew that the compliant wife was gone. What did you do? He whispered, his voice hoarse. Me? I asked, feigning innocence. I have not done anything. I am just here to support my wonderful husband and my amazing mother-in-law. It was time for Eleanor's speech. She walked onto the stage to a round of applause. She looked radiant under the lights. She beamed at the audience, a picture of grace and charity. Thank you, she began, her voice smooth and practiced. It warms my heart to see so many generous people here tonight, all coming together to support our city's most vulnerable children. I stood next to Mark, my arm linked through his. I could feel him trembling. Eleanor went on, talking about integrity and trust and the importance of giving back. Every word was a lie. I watched the faces in the crowd. They were captivated. They believed her. I saw Uncle David near the side of the stage, talking quietly with 2 other board members and a uniformed police officer. They were all looking at the documents I had given him. Eleanor was nearing the end of her speech. So let us open our hearts and our wallets, she said, her voice ringing with false emotion. Let us give these children the future they deserve. She raised her hands, accepting the thunderous applause. She smiled, a perfect, triumphant smile. And then the applause died down. Uncle David walked onto the stage. He took the microphone from her hand. The police officer and the 2 other board members followed him. Eleanor, Uncle David said, his voice shaking but clear. You are under arrest for embezzlement and fraud. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Eleanor's smile froze on her face. She stared at her brother-in-law, her eyes wide with disbelief. What is this? She stammered. David, what is the meaning of this? Is this a joke? It is no joke, he said, his voice growing stronger. We have evidence, irrefutable evidence that you have been stealing from this charity for years. The officer stepped forward. Ma'am, you need to come with us, he said, taking her arm. Eleanor finally looked out at the crowd. She saw hundreds of faces staring back at her, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning disgust. Her perfect world was crumbling around her. Her mask was shattered. Her eyes found mine. I was standing right in the front row next to her son. I was not smiling. I was not gloating. I just looked at her. I let her see that I knew. I let her see that I was the one who had brought her down. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The officer led her off the stage. The crowd erupted in a cacophony of whispers and gasps. Mark was completely frozen beside me. He was staring at the empty stage, his face as white as a sheet. He looked like he could not breathe. I leaned in close to his ear, just as his mother had leaned into mine at our wedding. Who is easy to manipulate now? I whispered. Then I turned and walked away. I did not look back. I walked out of the ballroom, out of the hotel, and into the cool night air. I took a deep breath. It was the first clean breath I had taken in a year. I was free. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The story was all over the news the next day. Charity Queen arrested for fraud. The details of Eleanor's deception came out. The fake companies, the laundered money, the lavish lifestyle she funded with stolen donations. Her reputation was not just ruined, it was annihilated. Mark was arrested the next day. The evidence against him was just as strong. He had been her accountant, her co-conspirator. He had helped her cook the books and hide the money. He tried to deny it, of course. He tried to blame it all on his mother, claiming she had manipulated him. But I had given the investigator, David, one more piece of information: the recordings. For the last month after I knew the truth, I had started carrying a small recording device in my purse. I had recorded conversations with Mark, with Eleanor. Conversations where they discussed the charity's finances. Conversations where Mark bragged about how clever he was, how he had set up a system that was foolproof. I had a recording of him laughing about how they had gotten my inheritance. She never even suspected, he had said to his mother over the phone. She just signed the papers. So trusting. It is almost sad. I gave those recordings to the police. They were the final nail in his coffin. His defense fell apart. He had no choice but to plead guilty. I filed for divorce immediately. With the evidence of his financial fraud, especially the theft of my premarital assets, the divorce was heavily in my favor. I did not just get my $50,000 back. The judge awarded me the house, free and clear, and a significant portion of his remaining assets as punitive damages. My life, which had been a nightmare, was slowly coming back together. The house, which had once felt like Eleanor's territory, was finally mine. I changed the locks again. I took down her hideous curtains and threw them in the trash, where they belonged. I painted the walls a bright, cheerful yellow. I filled the space with things that I loved. Sarah came over to help me redecorate. "I cannot believe you did it," she said, shaking her head in awe as we unrolled a new rug. "You took them down. You really took them down." "I had to," I said. "It was either them or me." "I am so proud of you," she said, giving me a hug. "You were so strong." I did not always feel strong. There were nights when I woke up shaking. The memory of that whisper at my wedding echoing in my ears. The betrayal still hurt. The man I had loved, the man I had married, had never been real. He was a phantom, a character he and his mother had created to lure me in. But with each passing day, the pain lessened. It was being replaced by a sense of peace, a sense of justice. I had a few more loose ends to tie up. I had a conversation with Mark's sister, Jessica. She had been the enabler, the one who always took her mother's side and made me feel like I was the crazy one. She called me, crying. "How could you do this to our family?" She sobbed. I felt a flash of my old anger, but I pushed it down. She was not worth my energy. "Your mother and your brother did this to your family," I said calmly. "They were criminals, Jessica. They stole from sick children. They stole from me. The only thing I did was turn on a light in a very dark room." "But she is our mother," she wailed. "And he is my brother." "And I was his wife," I said. "And they treated me like garbage. You stood by and watched them do it. You even helped them. So do not call me asking for sympathy. You have none from me." I hung up the phone. My last conversation was with Uncle David. He called to check on me. "I just wanted to say again how sorry I am, Clara," he said. "Sorry for what they did to you, and sorry that I did not see it sooner." "It is not your fault," I said. "They were very good at hiding it." "Still," he said, "I feel like I failed you. I failed the family. My brother would be ashamed." "Your brother would be proud of you," I said. "You did the right thing. That is all anyone can ask." We talked for a little while longer. He told me the charity was recovering. The board had been restructured. They were being transparent about what had happened, and to his surprise, donations were actually up. People respected that they had cleaned house and were moving forward with integrity. Before we hung up, he said something that stuck with me. You know, Clara, in a way, you saved them. I was confused. What do you mean? I asked. They were on a dark path, he said. They were getting bolder, more reckless. If you had not stopped them, who knows what would have happened? They might have destroyed the charity completely. They might have ended up in even more trouble. You forced them to face the consequences of their actions. Maybe someday they will understand that. I did not know if I believed that. I did not particularly care if they ever understood, but I appreciated the sentiment. Eleanor was sentenced to 10 years in prison. With her age and health, she would likely spend the rest of her life there. Mark got 7 years. He would be out in his late 30s, a convicted felon with nothing to his name. I sold the house. It had too many bad memories. I bought a small apartment in a different part of town, a place that was all mine. I started my own business, a small consulting firm. I was good at it. I was smart and strategic, qualities I had been forced to develop to survive my marriage. Sometimes, I thought about that moment at my wedding. That cold whisper, that frozen smile on my husband's face. It had been the worst moment of my life. But in a strange way, it had also been a gift. It had opened my eyes. It had shown me the truth before it was too late. Before I had wasted decades of my life in a loveless, manipulative sham. They thought I was easy. They thought I was weak. They learned that the quietest people often have the strongest will. They had tried to break me, but instead they had made me unbreakable. They had pushed me into a corner, and I had come out fighting. And I had won. My revenge was not just in their downfall. It was in my survival. It was in my happiness. It was in the quiet, peaceful life I had built for myself, far away from their darkness. They were in prison, but I was the one who was finally free. I had made sure that their punishment was not just a legal one, but a personal one too. I sent a single letter to Eleanor in prison. It contained only a copy of her signed confession and a photo of me, smiling on the steps of my new home. I did not need to write any words. The message was clear. I had won, and she had lost everything. Mark tried to reach out from prison through his lawyer, asking for forgiveness, suggesting that we could talk when he got out. I instructed my lawyer to send back a simple, 2-word reply. No contact. The bridge was not just burned. The ground it stood on was salted. There was nothing left to rebuild, and I had no interest in visiting the ruins. The legal battles took months to fully resolve. There were civil suits from the charity, trying to claw back as much of the stolen money as possible. My name was cleared from any association, thanks to Uncle David's public statements and the overwhelming evidence that I was a victim, not a participant. He made sure everyone knew that I was the whistleblower who had saved the organization. It was an unexpected kindness that helped me rebuild my own reputation in the community. One day, about a year after the gala, I ran into Jessica at the grocery store. She saw me and tried to turn her cart down another aisle, but it was too late. I walked right up to her. "Jessica," I said, my voice even. She flinched. "Clara," she mumbled, not meeting my eyes. I have to go. "I just have one question for you," I said, stopping her from leaving. "Why? Why did you go along with it? You knew how they were treating me." She finally looked at me, her eyes full of a mixture of resentment and self-pity. "You do not understand," she said. "That is just how Mom is. It was always easier to just agree with her, to keep the peace." "Easier for who?" I asked. "It was not easier for me. You watched them lie to me, steal from me, and you said nothing. You chose their side." "She is my mother," she repeated, as if that explained everything. "I know," I said. "And you let her ruin your brother's life and her own. All because you were too scared to stand up to her. I hope that peace you were keeping was worth it." I walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of the aisle. I did not feel anger anymore. I just felt a profound sense of pity for her. She would spend the rest of her life as a satellite to her mother's collapsed star, forever trapped in the gravitational pull of that toxic family. My own life, however, was moving forward. My business was thriving. I had built a reputation for being sharp, insightful, and incredibly thorough. The skills I had used to uncover my ex-husband's fraud turned out to be very valuable in the business world. I was helping other companies find and fix their own internal problems. I was taking chaos and creating order. It was deeply satisfying. I also started dating again. It was tentative at first. I was wary, guarded. But I met a man named Ben. He was kind, and he was simple in the best way possible. He was a high school history teacher. He was passionate about his work and his students. He was open and honest, sometimes to a fault. On our third date, I told him. I told him everything. I did not want any secrets. I laid out the whole ugly story of my first marriage, the betrayal, the investigation, the revenge. I figured it was better he know up front. If he was going to run, I wanted him to run early. He listened to the whole story without interrupting. When I was finished, he was quiet for a long time. I held my breath, waiting for the judgment, the disbelief, the fear. "Wow," he said finally. He reached across the table and took my hand. "That is an incredible story. I am so sorry you had to go through that, but I am also incredibly impressed." "Impressed?" I asked, confused. "Yes," he said, his eyes sincere. "You were trapped in an impossible situation, and you found a way out. You were smart and you were brave. Most people would have just fallen apart. You fought back. That is amazing." I felt tears well up in my eyes. No one had ever called me brave before. I had always just thought of myself as a survivor. His words, his simple, honest admiration, felt like a balm on a wound I did not even know was still there. That was the moment I knew I could trust him. That was the moment I started to let my guard down. Life with Ben was calm. It was stable. It was everything my life with Mark had not been. There were no mind games, no hidden agendas. If we had a disagreement, we talked about it. We did not always agree, but we always respected each other. It was a revelation. This is what a real partnership felt like. A few years passed. Mark was released from prison. I heard through the grapevine that he was living in a halfway house working a menial job. No one from his old life wanted anything to do with him. He had tried to contact Uncle David, who had refused to see him. Jessica, I heard, was still sending him money, still enabling him even from a distance. Some people never change. One afternoon, I was leaving my office building when I saw him. He was standing across the street, just watching. He looked older, thinner. His face was gaunt and his eyes had a haunted look. He saw me and he took a step forward as if to cross the street. I just stood there. I was not scared. I was not angry. I felt nothing. He was a stranger to me, a ghost from a past life that no longer had any power over me. I did not smile. I did not wave. I simply turned and walked to my car. I got in, and I drove away. I did not look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing back there for me. My future was ahead, and it was bright. Ben and I got married a year later. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family, in the backyard of the house we had bought together. Sarah was my maid of honor. Uncle David walked me down the aisle. There were no whispers. There were no secrets. There was only love and honesty. When Ben said his vows, he looked me in the eye, and I knew he meant every word. When I said mine, my voice was strong and clear. We built a good life. A real life. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl. They filled our home with laughter and joy. I never told them the details of my first marriage. There was no need. That part of my life was over. It was a closed book, gathering dust on a shelf I never visited. Every now and then, I would think of Eleanor, alone in her cell, and Mark, living a life of quiet desperation. I did not wish them well, but I no longer wished them ill either. They were irrelevant. Their punishment was the life they had created for themselves, a life without love, without trust, without honor. My victory was not just that I had exposed them. My victory was that I had moved on. I had healed. I had found a love that was real and a happiness that was earned. They had tried to manipulate me into a small, dark life, but I had broken free and built a world of my own, full of light. And in that world, I was no longer a victim. I was the architect. I was the one in control. And I was finally, completely at peace. The quiet confidence I now carried was the final testament to my journey. I learned that true strength is not about never being knocked down. It is about how you get back up, and how you ensure that those who pushed you over can never do it again. My life with Ben was a testament to that, a daily reminder that the past, no matter how dark, does not have to define the future. I had taken their worst intentions and used them as fuel to become the person I was always meant to be: strong, independent, and unwilling to be manipulated ever again.